Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the true story of literally the most successful pirate in history. But to really wrap our heads around the massive scale of this story, I want you to start this journey with me from a deeply, deeply stressed out perspective. Imagine for a second you're a commander in the Chinese Imperial Navy back in the early 19th century. You've got the full, terrifying might of one of the world's greatest empires right behind you, right? Thousands of sailors, hundreds of heavily armed warships, and your mission is supposed to be pretty straightforward. Destroy the pirates. Should be a walk in the park. But every single time you send out your armadas, they just vanish. Entire massive convoys are being swallowed up by the South China Sea. And meanwhile, the situation back on land? It's an absolute humiliation. Entire coastal ports and villages are actively paying protection money to outlaws right under your nose. And you're just watching helplessly? The empire's authority is completely undermined, and you are totally powerless to stop this river of silver flowing right into illicit hands. Oh, and it gets worse. The local economy is grinding to an absolute halt because wealthy merchants just flat out refuse to set sail. They won't move a single crate of cargo without buying permission first. And guess what? They aren't buying it from your government. They're buying it from the pirates. So this really illustrates the sheer, unadulterated panic of the era. It leads to one massive, desperate question for the Qing dynasty. Who exactly was destroying their fleets? I mean, who had the organizational genius to bring an entire empire's coastline to its knees? Well, that brings us to part one, the unstoppable pirate queen. Let's reveal the mastermind here, because it wasn't a king, it was an emperor, and it definitely wasn't some European naval commander. It was a woman named Zheng Yi Sao. Her origins are incredibly humble and honestly a bit of a mystery. She was born around 1775, and her actual birth name has literally been lost to history. A lot of her early life is shrouded in these highly dramatized, poorly documented tales. You'll often hear claims that she worked in a floating brothel in Canton, but historians definitely urge caution there since the hard evidence is pretty thin. What we do know for an absolute fact, though, is that her meteoric rise to power kicked off when she married the established pirate captain Zheng Yi in 1801. That was the turning point. And from day one, she wasn't just playing the quiet pirate's wife in the background. Not at all. Historical evidence shows she immediately became this highly active political and administrative partner. She was right in the thick of it, negotiating critical alliances, managing their complex internal affairs, and actively smoothing over relationships between historically rival pirate captains. This brings us to part two, building a pirate confederacy. Together, this husband and wife duo were effectively building a maritime superpower. Now, what is absolutely mind-blowing here is the sheer scale. We are not talking about a single rogue ship terrorizing a trade route like you see in the movies. By the early 19th century, we're looking at an alliance of hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of followers. To put that into perspective, some estimates suggest it was one of the largest pirate confederations ever recorded in human history. So how do you manage that many outlaws? Well, they organized this massive force into heavily structured fleets, brilliantly identified by colored flags. You had the black, white, blue, and yellow flag fleets. But dominating the whole shebang was Zheng Yi Sao's personal faction, the red flag fleet. This color-coded, almost corporate structure allowed for complex maneuvers and super clear chains of command across huge stretches of the ocean. But then, in 1807, disaster struck. Zheng Yi died unexpectedly during a storm in Vietnam. Historically speaking, this is the exact moment most pirate confederations would completely fracture and violently collapse into infighting. But instead of letting her empire crumble, Zheng Yi Sao stepped up. Working alongside her trusted lieutenant, Zhang Bao, she rapidly secured the absolute loyalty of the fleet commanders and seized total, undisputed control. She didn't just inherit that authority, she strategically and brilliantly won it. To pull that off, she had to rely on part three, rules written in blood. The real question is how you maintain control over tens of thousands of hardened criminals once you're the sole person in charge. And the answer? Strict, unwavering, and honestly, brutal administration. She implemented this ruthless corporate pirate code. We're talking severe punishments for disobedience or desertion. Interestingly enough, though, the mistreatment of captives was strictly forbidden. Gotta maintain some level of good public relations, right? But the most legendary rule was financial. All loot belonged to the fleet first, not the individual pirate. If you were caught stealing from the common treasury, you faced brutal consequences. It's definitely a massive step up from a modern HR violation. She essentially transformed piracy from a chaotic free-for-all into a highly disciplined naval operation. And because of that intense discipline, they weren't just stealing anymore. They were effectively governing the coastline. I mean, entire coastal villages paid them tribute. Fishing communities had to actively seek her permission just to cast their nets, and merchants paid a premium for her protection. Zheng Yi Sao literally built an alternative economy, fueled by taxes, permits, and protection rackets. Which naturally leads us to part 4, defeating the empires. Because, of course, the world's actual superpowers couldn't just sit back and ignore a rival government operating with total impunity in their own waters. A massive clash was inevitable. So the Qing government sent their imperial fleets to attack her. And they failed. Then, Portuguese naval forces joined the campaign to crush her. They failed too. Eventually, even British anti-piracy ships got involved in the operations. Yet despite facing the combined, repeated attacks of these major global powers, her confederation remained completely undefeated. No way around it, she outmaneuvered them all. Her fleets survived and thrived by using just absolutely unmatched tactics. They had this superior local knowledge of the coastline. They would move incredibly fast, strike when it was least expected, and then vanish into a labyrinth of islands and inlets way before the massive, cumbersome imperial armadas could even figure out how to respond. It was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. Eventually, the battered and highly embarrassed Qing court realized they just could not win militarily. This brings us to part 5, the ultimate exit strategy. They completely flipped their approach from seeking destruction to offering amnesty, which perfectly set the stage for Zheng Yi Sao's most brilliant move yet. In 1810, rather than fighting a grueling war to the bitter end, she casually went to the negotiating table and secured the deal of a lifetime. Step 1, she agreed to surrender a large chunk of her fleet. In exchange, Step 2, she received a full, unconditional pardon. Step 3, she was allowed to keep all her massive accumulated wealth. And Step 4, this is the kicker, she even secured a legitimate government role for Zhang Bao as a naval officer. She beat the empire at their own game, and then made them put her right-hand man on the official payroll. The massive gap between myth and reality here is just so striking. When you look at the chaotic, disorganized, doomed pirates we usually see in Hollywood, the ones who always end up dying violently on the gallows, and contrast them with Zheng Yi Sao, you see something entirely different. You see a disciplined, calculating CEO who actually won the game. Unlike Blackbeard or Captain Kidd, who were hunted down and executed, Zheng Yi Sao walked away completely free. She enjoyed a long, super peaceful retirement running a gambling house in Canton until she died comfortably in 1844. She was never hunted, never executed, and for sure, never forgotten. She challenged governments, controlled global trade routes, and entirely rewrote the rules of piracy. But I want to leave you with this final thought. The greatest victory of the Pirate Queen wasn't surviving the sea. It was knowing exactly when to leave it. It really makes you ask yourself, in our own careers and battles, do we have the strategic foresight to know when we've won and the discipline to finally walk away?